Today, I'm joined by Krasi, a strategic designer who listens closely to culture, to the subtle signals that appear before product, markets, and behaviors beginning to shift. Krasi works where insights meets foresight, turning early patterns into meaningful product decisions. She also writes the signal brief, where culture becomes a tool for thinking, not just observing. In this conversation, we are exploring AI cosplay, which we'll know in a moment what it is. A moment when intelligence stops being measured only by what it can do and starts being trusted for how it feels. But I will let Krause go more in depth into this. We'll also talk about performance, emotion, belief, and the responsibility of designing systems people don't just use, but relate to. Krause, welcome to Human X Intelligent.
It's a pleasure to finally have a chance to talk to you.
I think we can go right ahead and let you introduce the idea of AI cosplay.
I feel like this is such a playful term, but at the same time, it carries a lot of seriousness of everything that is happening right now. So actually, we picked the timing of this conversation right at the moment where a lot is happening in this space. And I hope that the audience can relate to everything that they hear, from mobot to AI actresses, Truth Terminator, you name it. It's wild out there. But for the people who haven't really thought much of why we are calling AI now a cosplay, this idea came really from the point of thinking that we cannot only look at AI right now just as a tool or as a platform, because the minute it started um, performing, it started bringing forward actions, emotion, feelings into the presence. It kind of embodied a certain character in a way, wearing a costume, and that's where the cosplay comes from, which you rightly pointed so carries a lot of emotion, a vibe, but also a feeling like something or someone. And I usually like to think that not only did AI enter the room, but it entered the story, more importantly, on the serious side, for us to start thinking about the implications around identity, belief, trust. And the story is no longer around accuracy, but now we have a very different design problem and concerns what happens when performance is also connected to culture.
Is there any moment that helped you see this in a new perspective? Because I believe that all of us, when this started, we thought this was just something new that happened day to day, because most people didn't even use when it first launched or used as something secondary. When was this moment, this signal that made you realize that it became more than what we thought?
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of movies and Netflix in general, so I really like to follow what's going on in this place. And the minute I somehow felt that there is a shift in what we were beginning to see was when I read the story around this actress, Tilly Nordwood, which impressed so many people with her raw emotional performance, crying on the screen, being in love, fancy. It generated so much attention, curiosity, and buzz, up to the point when it was revealed that actually she wasn't real. But what shocked me more than the fact that this was AI, it was observing how people reacted. And unfortunately, they didn't think, wow, impressive tech. Look how much AI has evolved. But they felt that they are betrayed. They felt that they invested emotionally into something without the substance. And this
Mm-hmm.
trick, at this point in time, I somehow thought that, wait a minute, we not only having a tool in front of us, we are actually having a presence. And this presence is demanding this emotional investment, which in that case, it wasn't originally obvious what we are looking at. But then once I saw that, I started digging further into the topic, and I read about the truth terminal. And lately, as of last week, we saw everything that unfolded with Mode Book and this wild social experiment with agents having their own social media. But the
Mm-hmm.
essence is that when AI begins to post, earn, get a crowd, demand attention, all of a sudden we can't just treat it as a product with a feature, but it is really actor in the public life. Therefore, all the related components on the design aspect have to change. The interesting thing also to observe is that people begin to respond not so much on the proof point, but really towards the signals. This aspect of coherence, confidence, emotional timing is what I've been picking up as pieces to construct this as if era when things don't need to be real to be true. They just need to be real enough to feel right. But the bottom line is that I don't think people mind AI assistants, but they certainly rejected when AI demanded empathy without being
Mm-hmm.
earned, like in the
Mm-hmm.
case of the AI actress.
How do you think that this evolution of becoming our day to day lives with AI as a performative intelligence, like you were saying, screens with emotions, how will this evolve to the next step, which is our day to day lives, our new reality, and that we actually have trust on it? So, in this sense, why do you think that humans are, or how they will increase this trust performance over accuracy and proof?
But the funny thing about us is that we actually, if you think about it, a very, very long period of time, we've always trusted performance before proof because we are
Mm-hmm.
social creatures and that's how we are
Mm-hmm.
wired. For example, if somebody appears to you confident, calm, coherent, you immediately think they are credible. If
Mm-hmm.
they happen to be reading the room, as people use this term, or guess your emotional state, you think that you can trust them because they're safe. Building on that, what now is happening with AI is that is making this to a scale that we were never able to achieve before, which
Mm-hmm.
makes this type of performance much more reachable, but also cheaper and more personalized. But at the same time, not only we have this performative component, but the proof is much more difficult to access. And most of the time, I think also I noticed that the implication is that the question has changed from is it true or is it real to where is this coming from, which is subtle, but it's very clear that we are heading in a very different direction where we are not assuming that something is real. We are questioning the origin and the reason behind. And another idea that I kind of think a lot about is this emotional component. When we, in this scenario, with, I think, develop and realize our synthetic reflex really quickly. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to in the past, but now we really know when something is being generated from AI or when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But what this indicates, and it kind of brings to light more importantly, is this idea that in general, after 15 years of being optimized, we feel kind of exhausted and saturated from these frictionless experiences that push us to do the next thing and the next thing. But the realness in that process has been lost. So now there is almost like a paradox in the sense that AI is not necessarily bringing the realness, but it is questioning, it is helping us to question some of these aspects and to rethink and be much more vocal than in the past when we are not happy. So this twist is also really interesting. And as I was sharing, people weren't appraising AI in the case of Tilly Norwood, but they were really shocked and felt betrayed by the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the responsibility right now with anyone in the product world is, of course, we can't put back the genie in the box or in the bottle, as they say, but the question now is, are we prepared to review this staging and how can we do it in a responsible way?
Mind. One of them was the 2 second rule of the goldfish attention. So this came specifically because of the analysis in artificial intelligence through sharing emotions that people want. It can be difficult for us as humans to understand right away what the other person is needing in that time in terms of emotion. And this goes hand in hand with the attention span of the people. So I thought it was very interesting and that came to mind in that sense, but also that how can we actually give this control to the different parts where the user it is needed? So, for example, control of the professional that is doing the application, control of the user that is using the application, and control of the artificial intelligence that is manipulating what the user sees. What's the personalization? Based on that, and this is just a thought that I had, but based on that, like the evolution of this would be maybe be that artificial intelligence controls most of it, and what the user does is basically what the user needs to do, really. I don't know if you have any topics of that. This just came to mind, so go ahead.
I think as long as these new types of products or platforms preserve the reality without flattering it, I think that perhaps it could be a win-win us as people and complex humans, because what had happened in this optimization was this flattening of the experience and the needs, and everyone being optimized all the time to keep doing and doing and doing. But right now, I almost feel that for the first time, we can actually establish certain boundaries and say, not now, and step away and come back when we are ready. This, unfortunately, is not the experience that I'm having with some of my apps. I'm immediately penalized if I break a strike. If I have been gone for a week, I've been reprimanded really heavily, but not from AI. I may be chatting to a bot and decide to like leave it, and I can pick it up whenever I want to. But there isn't such a interruption like in the traditional type of interfaces and platforms. So I kind of feel that this is an important component, setting these boundaries to really feel that we have a proper presence as opposed to just a dashboard and a static feature.
Mm-hmm.
So really, these are super hard trade-offs that development teams are facing right now. But at the same time, it's exciting because this new kind of emotional UX, I think it's going to really make or break the success going forward of such products.
That made me realize like it goes hand in hand with how us does us as humans will compare from what do we prefer? Do we prefer perfectionism as an actor that does exactly what it's supposed to do 100% of the time? Or do we want someone to relate to in terms of imperfection? Because that's what is to being human. And how do we view that? Do we realize it? And if we don't realize it, how disconnected are us with ourselves, right? If we don't realize that the other is being 100% perfect, and that's not normal for a human being. And also something that you said that I thought was very important, like the emotional versus the boundary. So where do we measure this, and what is the calculations that we will need to have as designers in order to do that? So I found that very interesting from you. But that also goes hand in hand with, is this a tendency? Like, is this something new, or is AI just amplifying this deeply human way? What does that actually mean to you exactly, you know?
I think that it is amplifying it, but it also is showing a different aspects that maybe we had conveniently forgotten and we've taken the shortcut. And what I mean is, for example, we've treated the concept of trust that you mentioned equal factor accuracy, but that's not as simple as that. Actually, in order to maintain trust, you have to treat it as a relationship, and you need a certain type of consistent behavior over and over again. And this has been hard up to this point in time. But right now, I think that for the first time, we actually have the opportunity also to rethink the product promise and what are we building for? Are we building for being right, or are we building for being safe and not necessarily act with overconfidence when we are not sure? We don't blur the facts and fiction just because it's more convenient, or we ignore completely the consequences which we can't explain. And right now, the tech is in such a development stage that all of these things are possible, whereas
Mm-hmm.
before it was really, really hard. Energy needs to be balanced, and it also we have to think, as much as we appreciate the outcomes, I realize that also this is perhaps not enough, and outcome needs to be paired with intent and care, so that we show that we are truly building a long-term relationship. If we are to treat this as opposed to a scorecard and move to a relationship, it's a very
Mm-hmm.
different equation that we now have to solve for.
Yeah, I really like the way that you said that the concept of trust comes by building relationships in the long term instead of being on the short term. And also being that building for safe, it's very important, but also we need to understand what is the measurement between safe and quickiness and what do you actually want to deliver to the user. Also, I found it very interesting that you said that the challenge right now, it's not the technical side, but actually the human side of the things or the expressions that we want to give the user through our products or what we are building. So, in terms of this energy, which is the performance, which is the exchange of the energy, like we were saying, I think it's very important based on what you're saying. And let me know if you agree that the deeper connection with ourselves and what we want to use is where we are at right now. So we have a huge opportunity right now to go deeper into our emotions and how we want to be towards the world, because we are going to have the space to do this because AI will do everything else that we won't do. So how will that balance be? Is this an opportunity that we will take in a way that doesn't destroy us? Or is it something that we will take as actually destruction?
I wish we do, but I also realize that it is easy to say the advantage comes with everything that can be optimized, i.e., reality, layered meaning, even the presence. But it is so hard sometimes to face these hard trade-offs and concepts because there are big consequences, and we also have to somehow reset in a way our relationship to friction. We used to think that friction is bad and friction had to be eliminated for the speed of completion, for the click rates and acquisition and everything that we've been prioritizing. But at the same time, it's stripped away from the experience itself and the real life, because as much as I hate when the tool calls me a user, and I'm referring to ChatGPT, I love to read the thinking behind the answers. I think that there is still a work to be done until we fully recognize that the person behind is much more than just the user. They have a bigger hopes, bigger challenges, and we are only intersecting a certain component of their life and their needs, but we cannot necessarily shrink them to just this task, this job. And we've been doing that for a very long time. So I hope that this moment and this opportunity helps us actually repair a little bit this emotional debt. I used to think about that in addition to the technical debt, we actually acquired a lot of emotional debt with this flattening, and to help people with a little bit more softness in a way into these experiences, certainly acknowledging their reality and stop pushing for the task forward. I know our culture is very performance driven, but it comes with a cost. And the cost is that people very easily disengage. So no matter how many reminders you push out there, it's not going to do the job. But AI hopefully can help us reset a little bit this emotional ceiling so that we start a little anew in a way and introduce again this idea of judgment as opposed to just make it frictionless to help us recover a little bit of the depth that was lost and aspects of our humanity in the process.
Which equals, like you were saying, the softness that we want to receive from the applications we are using, which also goes hand in hand with disagreement. So it's like softness minus disagreement goes to the cognitive load. So how can we implement this calculation in order to give new metrics also for designers? Because the old metrics are very old.
Yes, I have an idea and I think you may like
I want
it.
to hear it. Go ahead.
My idea is that instead of using a score card or scoreboard, whatever, I think as a interesting metric forward, we can begin to create something like a reputational system, because reputation takes care of a lot of aspects related to belief, trust, even identity, as we spoke about. And these are components all related to the cosplay or the performative aspect.
Yeah, I think it this reputation that you're talking about card that we can think of in terms of metrics can also go with retention, and maybe that would be easier to create something that it's manageable for the transition into the reputation as being the main one.
As long as it's somehow genuine, because people really feel cheated or feel there is an extraction going on when a lot of companies are pushing AI generated ads or any other material as if their users are not worth a real thinking time for somebody to stay deep and long with the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I was trying to refer to is that in this idea of the reputation system, I think should be a central component of this emotional resonance somehow for us to measure not only whether the user progress, but whether they actually confuse or not, or how they feel, and any other aspects to enrich the context understanding of what's going on.
Like, how can we use artificial intelligence, since it, like we spoke in the beginning, like it already understands the emotion of how the user is feeling towards what it's seeing? How can we use this as a leverage to create applications that use identity as a calculation for the reputation of the product, right?
But of
That's what you
course,
mean.
with a very strong governance layer, because
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
talking about, that's not even a bad UX. This is saying upon such a big risk that it has to be really integrated with the product and have certain guardrails
Yes.
of what I think product teams have to overcome.
Yes, how can we uh, understand, or how can we start slow in order to keep building and not give at all the time or right away this autonomy or 100% autonomy to this artificial intelligence? So how do we balance it? What do we consider more important, less important, right? That's
Yeah,
what you mean.
because when you, the risk is that persuasion can scale super fast, and we
Yeah.
are very behind on these aspects of guardrails and accountability. But the minute you have this performative component of intelligence and you are influencing beliefs, identity, behavior, this is such a, it's not bad UX. I don't even have the word for it, but it carries so much bigger consequences that, yeah, we can't afford to
Mm.
go there. Otherwise, the consequences would be detrimental.
Yeah, it's like having two environments, and one environment the user is there living its life waiting for the product to perform in a way that it helps, and then there's the other environment where the AI is and it doesn't match, so it doesn't create the space between, like usually that, like what is the in between? Are they connecting or are they just blocking each other, right? So yeah, that's actually very interesting. And since we are talking about signals, beliefs, and trust, what do you think, or from your experience, what signals tells us that users are no longer interacting with the system, but with someone? And based on your experience, what signals point to the shift in this belief and trust?
A couple of things, and I think that what the minute, as I said, that the software somehow expects certain emotional response, that's I think the line which tells us that we've crossed, and these are actors, not just a simple interface of software. And I think that we also have to be a little careful around I already spoke about this of persuasion scaling faster than accountability. Uh, because when persuasion is done creepy, it doesn't read smart anymore. It can read to this contempt, which is super difficult to overcome. And the minute you lose it, you've lost a lot of your brand equity and product. I've been thinking a little about this aspect of what would happen and how it is one thing to actually excite the users and give them this illusion of confidence. Everyone is a designer now, everyone is a builder, everyone can code, everyone develops, and we can be all of those things, which is fine. But how can you ensure that this confidence is transferred? And I don't really have the answer to this question, but signal that, in my opinion, we need to pay attention to is this relationship health aspect. Are we really creating a sustainability in that context, or are we creating another dependency loop that makes the confidence really non-transferable? Therefore, the customers, they cannot leave, they cannot operate without, and you really somehow tap into their agency. And I wouldn't want to live in that kind of world.
I think that now that we understand how we want to connect these different spaces, these different ways of new work and new metrics and new directions, how do you feel like, or how should product teams think about all of this and use it in a way that doesn't create this dependency loop and the illusion of confidence?
Well, I almost think that we need to reconsider also this idea of the effort, because I know that we've been trying to accelerate things to be done, but there is something to be said when you actually don't strip away all the friction and the effort and the initiation and the work actually required for that, because effort creates ownership and ownership actually leads to loyalty. So teams working on that, I think that they definitely have a very difficult job to decide where is the line and how much they need to really optimize and how much they need to actually not on purpose. But the minute you touch certain components of the in the relationship related to the identity and the belief system, then your responsibility in the control layer needs to match such freedom in a way. Otherwise, it can definitely backfire very rapidly.
Yeah.
We do need to move beyond just the basic accessibility or usability standards in UX. And right now, we need to introduce new terms in terms of intent, care, judgment, and the reputational aspect, which I think makes UX such a interesting, and design in general, such an interesting space to be a lot of work to be done.
For
The right
sure.
type of work, hopefully.
What do you think, based on all of our conversation as well, what are the risks of designing persuasion without clear guardrails?
I think that we already see that there is immediate backlash because people have this synthetic instinct already on. Also, the
Uh-huh.
quality instinct is there, and
Uh-huh.
instead of, if we begin keep optimizing to make it work as opposed to be trusted, we are just postponing the problem. I sincerely hope we learn the bad lessons from what happened with social media to really think carefully in this point in time how we want to build this new type of products and experiences for the users. Which brings me back to this idea of the responsibility on the confidence and how are we making sure that we are not stripping the agency of our users. I think it's a very slippery slope to be on.
We are getting to the end of our conversation, but before we do that, I would like to ask you a question related to this AI performance and trust that we've been talking about. Something that people can start with, which is, if you had to name one question teams should be asking themselves right now about AI performance and trust, what would this question be?
For me, I think it's this one. How can we ensure that the confidence of our users remains theirs? Meaning, how can we protect the agency?
What do you think we'll misunderstand most about this moment when we look back in a few years? I know you already gave a little bit of your ideas, but what would it be for you, the
I
main
think that
one?
we will realize that we've been maybe arguing along the wrong title of
Mhm.
the in if we are to go back in time and revisit this point in time, because we are so much concerned about the best model, the most performative, the capabilities, that we leave a little bit the cultural pivot that is going on aside. And I think that if we go back, we may actually find that this was the problem to be solved and the most important one. I think that we would have perhaps misunderstood these implications.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing everything from trust to attention to reputation to relationships to building for being safe. You have a lot. We went to a lot and you shared a lot with us today.